My name is Keith Carr, and I'm the manager of policy and government relations for City Harvest. And City Harvest is one of the food banks here in New York City. We're a food rescue organization, and I'll talk a little bit about that later on. I've been there about 9 years. It started off just doing community outreach, community engagement around food access issues, but always sort of had, because of my own personal relationships and interest in politics, had a relationship with a lot of elected officials. So here I am as the manager of policy and government relations. So really looking at how we can forward and improve food security in the city through policy recommendations and advocating with our elected officials, both on a citywide level, state and national. My meal, I would say Thanksgiving is definitely a meal that brings me back. I grew up in Connecticut, and every Thanksgiving we would go to my grandparents had a farm in East Connecticut, and we grew everything there. So we had about 15 acres, and 3 of those acres was what my grandmother would call the garden. I know for most city folks, they think 3 acres is a farm, but but even 15 acres is a small. But the 3 acres, she would grow food for the house and for us, and so everything from something that we grew, and all the meat on the table came from something that my grandfather. We would go hunting, we'd go fishing, so it'd be something that we hunted. I remember one year we always had turkey, but one year we had pheasant and rabbit and venison. Venison is deer meat, and so that to me was like as close to frontier Thanksgiving experience. So every time I have a Thanksgiving dinner, that's just that taste reminds me of those happy memories. But also, for me, it symbolizes resiliency and sustainability and sovereignty. That we were really self-sustained. We had our own well, so didn't even have to depend on the town for water. The only thing we needed to get from them was electricity, because this was before solar panels. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. That's pretty awesome. And I love how you took it back to Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So it's great to hear that basically you grew up on a farm. So you learned how to do all of those things from beginning to end, which our students are learning about, how farm goods end up in grocery stores, how everything is transported, or even how we have our farmers markets. Everything comes from upstate or Long Island, and it's trucked to us in the city, and that's how we purchase our produce. But we also have to understand the buying power of buying those farm to table items, where we have to pay for labor, we have to pay for gas, we have to pay for transportation. There's a whole lot that goes to farming that people don't quite understand. So
it's someone's job, it's someone's livelihood, and that's how they keep their lights on, and that's how they keep gas in the truck.
The next question is, how is City Harvest involved in the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Lower East Side?
Citywide, so we service all 5. Bronx and Brooklyn, we probably have our biggest presence, because that's where a lot of the food insecurity exists. So we service about 400 food pantries, food pantries and soup kitchens, and we also have our free produce giveaways that we do twice a month, 2 except for Brooklyn. Brooklyn only 1, and it's a free produce giveaway set up like a market. And then we also have our community partner mobile markets, where a community partner runs the mobile market and City Harvest just drops off the food to that partner, and the partner bags the food and hands it out and distributes it to the community as best as they see fit. So so far as the Bronx and Brooklyn, there's one community partner market in the Bronx, and that's in Williamsbridge. And then there's also in Brooklyn, Bensonhurst, Sheepshead Bay, Brownsville, East New York. There's one at the fair houses, as well as another one of its field houses. On the Lower East Side, there's one which you guys are familiar with at Grant Street Settlement, and we took one even more now with with COVID and everything.
Thank you for that. Our Teen Culinary Apprenticeship program actually expanded this year, so we actually have 3 cohorts running, and they are those target sites: Bronx, Brooklyn, and Lower East Side, and we also have students from Queens now. So, they've been pretty involved, and we're trying to get out as many connections to resources as possible. So this is even more of the best reason to have you on to speak to our students, just to let them know what's going on.
And I mean, one thing that we do, we've always done nutrition education. So it's not just, we're not just I think we've always done some type of nutrition education. So with our new strategic plan, our motto is no one gets food without culinary education, and no one gets the culinary education without food. So instead of just taking bag things that they may not be familiar with, or they'll take it home and just cook it in the same unhealthy way that they normally do, we want people to take that food, use it to help you become more healthy. So if you get, with diabetes in our communities, a lot of what we give out are foods that diabetic could be harmful, but here's a better way to cook those potatoes. So, I mean, we give out a lot of root vegetables and everything and bananas, but there's a way for you to eat that. And just every mobile market, we hand out recipes and then some guidance on healthy eating.
Our next question is, what do you think the greatest challenge New Yorkers face when trying to acquire fresh fruits and vegetables? I know you spoke a little bit about being food insecure.
Almost everyone, I think, like I said, I didn't realize it was, but the average person doesn't realize that they're food insecure and it's simply because the city is just so expensive to live in. And then food is the last thing on your budget to really put money towards. Like, you want to make sure your gas stays on, the lights stay on, that you have a roof over your head, and cable takes precedence sometimes over food. But the fact that this year we're going to distribute probably more than 75 million pounds to our pantry network is insane. It's insane that there's that much of a need, and happy to meet that need, and luckily that we're able to. And our donors, our food donors are great, and our financial donors are great. It shows that the food system in New York really needs to have some type of change. But the biggest challenge, say, facing New Yorkers to getting fruits and vegetables is really availability. We did a lot of work in early years that I was at City Harvest on working with supermarket bodegas to get them to improve upon the fruits and vegetables, that there's more variety and more just fresher foods. And just, we had produce whisperers who would go into the stores and the produce department in a different way. These don't belong in a mister, but these do. Why are the potatoes on the floor? And would give them refrigeration units and display units and everything to display their produce. So each retailer showed that once they made those changes, their sales increased. People want to see fresh food, especially if you're an immigrant, used to seeing produce that's fresh. The food chain in New York City, for the average person that goes to a supermarket, it's farmer, processor, distributor, on a train, on a train, whatever, then some other local distributor, and then finally to the supermarket. And like my experience growing up in Connecticut, like, our food went straight from the field onto our plates. If you live upstate closer to farms, a lot of times it's from the farm to a farmer's market to your plate. So you really want to eat food that has little steps in that food getting to you in the process for the food to be fresher and to be healthier and more nutrient dense. The problem with availability in New York City is that there aren't enough farmers markets. There aren't just the nature of how farmers markets are set up, and what it costs the farmer. Like, everyone says, oh, I want a farmer's market over here, but a lot of times they only have 2 trucks, and one is making deliveries to their customers, and the other one might be dedicated to going to a farmer's market. And so they can't be everywhere at the same time. So that's why there's really a need for downstate food hubs, places where people can access food from upstate. There needs to be better infrastructure, like with our railways and waterways, to bring food from upstate, because we want to support the upstate farmers, but the infrastructure is not really there. So Hunts Point up in the Bronx, the Hunts Point Food Distribution Center, like I think less than maybe 20% of less than 25 or 20% of the food there actually comes from within New York City. So we need more green markets. A lot of communities just don't have green markets. And I mean, unless, I think the ratio between supermarkets and bodegas is like 1 to 56, and in some communities like 1 to 70. One supermarket is 56 to 70 bodegas, and most bodegas don't carry fruits and vegetables. So, I mean, so a lot needs to happen and a lot needs to change.
What challenges do you run into when asking farmers or growers for donations?
A lot of the food that we get from across the country comes because we're part of the Feeding America network. Then we also have a fantastic partnership with Grow NYC, where we go to, like the Union Square Farmers Market, or the one at Rockefeller Center, or the one at the Oculus, and a couple of others around the city, and we get the food directly from the farmers there. So we've all been able to get food from the farmers. It's just harder. A lot of so the way, so this COVID crisis, everyone saw what happened with, it was all on the news. You saw farming milk down into the sewer, and you saw like the mass slaughtering animals, because once they lost all their restaurant customers, most, particularly smaller farmers upstate, they grow, like I said, they plan their crops to grow for the farmers market, and then they have their restaurant and catering clients. And once the restaurants closed, all the farmers upstate really had where no one knew, and everything, oh, they should donate it. But I mean, unfortunately, that wasn't their mindset. They're just like, this stuff is going bad, I need to just turn it over to the ground. And then also how the COVID crisis hit their workforce. If you have 1 or 2 families, most upstate farmers have their family, they may have 1 or 2 families of, like migrant workers. And if someone from that family got sick or whatever, so the workforce is decimated, so they just didn't have the people to do the work. So a lot of that's why you saw people, like, quote unquote, wasting food. And the same thing happened with the big farms, and that's what got all the press, like Tyson and Purdue and all those the pig farmers and chicken farmers. So through the USDA, they have this program called Families First. It's through the CARES Act. It's called Families First Food Box Assistance Program, or the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program. So the USDA is paying the farmers now to pack up that food, like harvest that food, and then they're placing it into food boxes. And so City Harvest and other food banks around the country will start getting these boxes of food that we can distribute at our distributions and our pop-up distributions. And the state has Nourish New York, which is really the thing on upstate farmers. So sort of the same thing. We're given money to purchase food from those local farmers. So City Harvest is focusing on, actually had a couple of conversations today on how we can really support like small to local farmers that may not get that attention that a larger farmer would, and how we can use it to support them. Particularly, this is an opportunity for us. We have no problem getting produce, but a lot of food banks just don't get that much meat or dairy. So this is an opportunity for us to buy some good meat and some dairy and yogurts and things like that. It's farming is their business. And like, I mean, especially like a larger farmer, a lot of them say, I only get paid twice a year. The first harvest, like the early summer harvest, and then like the fall harvest. So depending on what your crops are, I mean, if you're growing corn and the bulk of your harvest is corn, and all of your clients aren't there, so what do you do with that corn? And you look to the left, you look to the right, and the people who would normally buy from you aren't even in business. And I mean, so these restaurants, like in the first couple of weeks of them, I had folks from the governor's office calling because all these different restaurant associations were calling because they had all this leftover food in their storage and in their freezers, and they didn't know what to do with it. Like, there's plenty of food. I just want to say there's plenty of food in the food chain, but the problem now is just getting it harvested or getting it prepared. And the biggest slowdown, I would say, is how the food gets to us. And that's why you really want to, like, I'd love to see taking some of those steps out of food before it gets to New York. So, I mean, trucks can only drive so fast. I mean, trains can only move so fast. So, so we really need more local food hubs besides the Hunts Point. That's why myself and a couple other folks that are part of the Central Brooklyn Food Hub Committee have been really like trying to work with the governor's office to have another downstate food hub in Brooklyn to support this area, and Brooklyn could support Long Island, it could support Staten Island, it could support Queens, and that's another. Unfortunately, if Brooklyn is the foodie borough of the city, and all these restaurants here and chefs are coming here to open up restaurants, I mean, they need to have, instead of driving away to the Bronx.
What government-instituted policies are most responsible for affecting New Yorkers' access to food, healthy food, either positive or negatively?
SNAP, Supplementary Nutritional Assistance Program, food stamps. The fact that, I mean, with this administration, that it's so hard to to get people for them to increase SNAP and have to justify why people need more money to buy food is kind of crazy. But the House bill that recently passed, the last stimulus package, negotiated a 15 or 60% increase of SNAP, I think from $16 to $30, like the lowest rate. So we're always advocating for more increases to SNAP. Feeding America, the network that we belong to, that for every meal that a food bank provides, SNAP can actually provide 8 meals. So you go into a pantry and get like a bag or 2 bags of food. If you just had like more money on your EBT card, you could provide more for your family and not have to wait in that line. We advocate, a lot of my work, and my colleague Jerome, a lot of our work is just advocating for increases to SNAP and shoring that up. One thing that's happened with the pandemic is pandemic. So that enables all New York City public school students to receive a temporary SNAP benefit. So if you're a public school student, you get a SNAP benefit card that you can use to buy meals, and then other support families. There's also another, like a family COVID EBT that advocating for, and it's passed. This administration has issued rulings and regulations attacking anyone that's receiving any type of benefit. So like the public charge regulations, which has always been part of legislation, but now just making people afraid to use their benefits for fear that they'll be found out or get deported or whatever, making it harder and harder for undocumented people to receive any type of benefit, or even if you're here, and with registered alien status, like just making it harder for you to receive any type of benefit. I mean, City Harvest, we have about, actually, I don't know how many employees we have now because with the new hires, but normally we have about 160, between 120 and 160 employees. They're the people that source the food, the people that comb the country and comb the state, that's called food sourcing. And they're just on the phone and on the computer all day trying to get as much food donated to City Harvest as we possibly can. We also buy food. By being a food bank and a member of Feeding America, there are things called TFAP, Temporary Food Something Program, and some other FAPs and NEPs. But it's a pool of monies that we can use to buy food, emergency food. Then, so the food sourcing people are out scouring to get the food. Then the transportation department at our FRF, that's a food rescue facility out in Queens, the food gets delivered there, and then we do, like I said, these things called repacks, where we repack the food, because a tractor trailer comes in just full of potatoes, like potatoes in big bins, or watermelons or cantaloupes or whatever. So we have to put that in a way to distribute it evenly to the food pantries. We have people that are just at the warehouse all day. I think we're moving 1.2 to 1.3 million pound food through the FRF since the crisis started, which is bananas. I mean, it's crazy, the fact, and the space hasn't gotten any bigger. It hasn't gotten any, I mean, we've hired a couple of new people to help with the volume, but for them to just even to organize the trucks going in and out of the parking lot is a feat. And like, we have business intelligence. Our business intelligence people, I mean, generate reports and find out, like how much food is going where. Like even the people at the warehouse, they have there's a way they can measure to rotate the food as it comes in. If we do have to actually store things longer than normal, to test the freshness of things when they come in. And if it's doesn't meet our standards, we don't accept it. Some people think that we have a lot of waste. We glean a lot because, just with transportation and everything. So some of what we do is glean things that may have been damaged in transport, that might be moldy or whatever. And we have a relationship with Department of Sanitation that the food goes to their composting program. We have our marketing department and our communications department, that all the ads and everything you see on TV and you hear on the radio and at bus stops and on trains. We have our fundraising department, like people that reach out to private donors, and then people that reach out to foundations and government foundation and government support. We have our special events that do all the really cool events that we normally do. Our policy and government relations folks. And then all the people who just, the finance department and people that just crunch the numbers and make sure we're in compliance with everything. And so it's a very well-oiled machine, and it works. And that's why, like, people know when they donate to City Harvest or work with us that, we are who we say we are, and that's why I think we get so much love because we're New York's sort of food bank.
Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us, and we look forward to more collaborations in the future. And you are always welcome to come back whenever you want. And we are looking forward to things returning back to normal, so we can actually get to go on that farm tour and to do some things with our alumni. You are an awesome. We appreciate everything that City Harvest is doing today. And we also appreciate you for coming to speak to our students, our alumni, and our staff today as well. Thank you so much, Keith.